Welcome to the 10 Kites Menu Engineering Masterclass. I'm Claire Chalmers, Chief Revenue Officer at Nutritics, and it is lovely to see so many of you joining us today. Today, we're going to look at the menu through a slightly different lens, not just as something guests read before ordering, but as a really crucial, influential part of how a business performs day to day. In terms of who is joining me today, I am delighted to introduce our brilliant panel of Annica Wainwright, who I'm sure everyone already knows, but a former food journalist turned strategist, co-founder of Two Forks, and is known industry-wide as the Menu Geek. Laura Mimoun, CMO at Fulham Shore, looking after brands we all know like Annica and The Real Greek. And James Mobbs, founder of RevOps Hospitality, and he has 20 plus years of experience from the Alchemist and East Coast concepts. Not that you can tell by the way that he looks. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to, just a bit of housekeeping actually. There's a Q&A box at the bottom, so if you can just pop your questions in there as we go along. We have set some time aside at the end to put them to the experts, but with that, everything else should go ahead smoothly. So I will hand over to Annica.
Cool. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. So Laura and James and I have known each other for a while, but the first time we properly all talked menus together was a few weeks ago now, maybe a couple of months ago even, at the Peach Marketing Leaders Lunch, which was very generously hosted by Claire and the Nutritics team. We had champagne and wine and delicious lunch at, what's it called? Hills something.
10 Hills.
10 Hills, Evolved Collection in the city, beautiful venue. And the theme for that lunch was who owns the menu. And as everyone in the room was in marketing, we're a marketing leader, I proposed that I think marketing leaders are in a very good position to own the menu project, own the menu process. And I presented a 5-step plan for how you might take charge of the menu process. And that sort of kickstarted a big discussion amongst everyone in the room, and we talked about what different people's involvement with the menus were. We shared some great ideas and tricks, and we had a brilliant conversation. A lot of what we covered there, including my 5-step plan, is now in the Menu Profit Playbook, which I think all of you have been sent when you signed up for the webinar. So instead of going over what we already covered, because you can all go and catch up with that in the playbook, I thought today we would dive a little bit deeper, because I think what we always discover when we talk about menus is that there's just so much to talk about. And the menu, I would argue, is any restaurant business's most valuable sales tool. And yet so often it's kind of rushed, or it's not really owned by any one department, and quite often those of us who are in marketing end up getting the menu sort of just a few days before press, when we don't really have much time to do anything. So I thought we would talk about what benefits there is to having a proper process, and how when you do follow a process, you can end up with a fully optimized menu that makes a difference, not just to your bottom line, but to your customer experience and to your employee experience, so you can be a better employer in the process. Obviously, in order to get to that stage, you need to put the work in. And I have courses and workshops where I teach a 10-step plan for fully optimized menus. Obviously, we don't have time to cover all of that today. So what we've decided is to focus on 3 really core topics that I feel are very central to menu engineering and menu optimization. So first, defining and researching your project. Second, analyzing those insights and identifying the opportunities that you might want to move forward with. And then finally, implementing those opportunities really strategically. And I think with the panel today, we have some really interesting different takes on what we have done in terms of the work on these different sides of the project. So anyone that's ever heard me talk about menus in the past will know that I always go on about how research is the most important part of the process, and I'm really lucky to be working with amazing clients like Laura who value research as well, and surrounding myself with peers like James and Claire who also get really geeky about research. So I thought we could start talking about that piece. But before, obviously, you can even begin to research, you need to sort of define your project and kind of know where to start and how you even set goals for your project. So Laura, I know when you spoke at RMI earlier this year, so many people walked away with the one line that you said, which was, it always has to start with the food. So just to kick us off, could you talk a little bit about how that focus on the food has helped guide the menu work that we've done together at The Real Greek?
Thank you. Yes, I think it always starts with food. I joined Fulham Shore a year and a half ago, taking care of Franco Menka and The Real Greek. And The Real Greek has been in decline for a while. And there are a lot of things we can be doing. We can do a brand refresh, we can work on the operation, the service, but we wanted to start with the food. And this is for this project that we met Annica and started a very interesting and fascinating journey. So the first phase was actually research, which was led in-house. And I think one of the key points I wanted to share actually is all the things people can do for free in-house, and you don't need to, appoint a very expensive agency, consumer insight agency, to actually try to understand your customers, the performance of your menu, and so on. So we really started with some research. Annica prepared a lot of surveys for our customers. We used our CRM to get some insights. We obviously looked at our sales. We interviewed our front of house, our back of house team, and then the journey started like that. And the number one thing before touching the menu layout or even which dish we wanted to have was to really understand what our customer wanted, but also what was working or not working in our current offering. So that was, the beginning of the journey.
And we did identify some menus, some items on the menu that were actually really popular with customers, but they were ordered in high volume, but they weren't delivering in terms of flavor. So they were also causing customers to lapse or even leave terrible reviews of certain dishes. So it was important, wasn't it, to get the food offer really right from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. You told me something which I think is so true. You told me we need to ask everyone. So, for instance, the KP is the person that can actually see what's left in the plate, and all these little details of getting insight from everyone, but also onboarding everyone in the journey of a big menu restage were really critical.
Yeah, definitely. And that's always one of my favorite sort of shortcut tricks, because although I always advocate for spending proper time on research, I also know that we are time poor in this industry and everyone wants a quick fix. And if you don't have time to do customer surveys or role play interviews like the ones we usually do, where we sit down and actually ask customers to order from a menu, pretend that I've never been before and telling me how I should or putting a meal together for both of us. If you don't have time for any of that, I think the number one advice is talk to your teams, because they're the ones who spend more time with your customers than anybody else. And so they will know which dishes are brought to the tables and people are a bit like, oh, what's that? Or the ones that you bring out and people go, wow, and are sort of pleasantly surprised. And as you say, the KP will know which dishes get sent back, and the chefs will know what other little things that people are asking to change. Every restaurant will have hacks where people will ask for that sauce on the side, or can I swap this for that? If that happens all the time and you don't know about it when you're working on the menu, you could be missing opportunities for creating great new dishes, or maybe even cutting out waste, or just making the whole process much more smooth. So yeah,
I think
that's
it's also really interesting speaking to the team. What dishes do people always ask about that they maybe don't understand? I think especially if you're in, so Victor's has got quite a few Asian-inspired dishes, right? So it's got things like tataki, right, which is an Asian version of beef carpaccio, basically. So dishes like that where the team will feed back to be like, people love the dish, but they always ask about it. They always want to know kind of what it is. They don't fully understand it. And again, that's where I think just speaking to your team can make a world of difference.
Yeah, not just to your offer, but also to your employee experience. Imagine if you work, and you must have this in Francomanca, for example, where if you work in a pizzeria and customers don't know the size of the pizza, you're probably asked 5 or 6 times during every shift, how big is the pizza? And that will start grating on you to the sort of point where you sort of feel like, oh, if anyone else asks me this today, I want to whack them over the head with a pizza box. But so there are little things you could do with the menu, where maybe there is a sort of outline of a pizza somewhere on the menu that shows the size. I know when we worked on the caravan menus, the teams there were really upset about, not upset, but it was grating that they kept getting asked how many dumplings are in a single portion of dumplings. And that's so easy to add the words 3 dumplings or 4 tacos or whatever it is, just so that you can avoid those questions being asked over and over again. Sorry, Laura, you were about to say something.
Yeah, I guess, making sure you anticipate the question that people would have, definitely. The other thing we've done is really try the food, constantly trying the food, tasting the food everywhere in every restaurant, to really try to understand how consistent all the dishes were, and asking the team how difficult the consistency was to achieve on every dish. And I think that really played a very big role in deciding what to keep and what to stop. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, we obsessed. I actually, this is also something I recommend, picking a few really key dishes. So the ones that your customers are expecting to be really good, the ones that are really popular. We picked the tzatziki and the Greek salad. We have ordered that not just every single time we've gone to our own restaurants. I can't even begin to count how many Greek salads we've had, but we've also had Greek salads in every restaurant we went to in Greece, in every Greek restaurant we've been in the UK. I've eaten, like, I'm probably half feta by now. But obsessing over certain things, I think, really pay off, so that that your cornerstone dishes are super good.
Yeah.
So moving into the geekier side of research then, James, I know you're really into competitor research, pricing analysis. Could you talk about some of those things that you've been working on, and what you could maybe learn from that?
Yeah, sure. So again, I think, as you say, a lot of it can be done manually with a bit of donkey work that actually costs nothing other than a bit of resource time. So we've got one of our clients, so again, go back to Victor's, probably eight kind of key competitors that we look at kind of religiously to track. So we've got a spreadsheet. Literally, it's just an Excel spreadsheet with all of those competitors, and then breaking the menu down into starters, main, sides, desserts, drinks, picking out key items there that are the most comparable to our items. And then really, like, every couple of months, someone in the team will go back to that and just update. So this is going back probably about 3 years now. So we've literally got a spreadsheet of all our key competitors' prices that have changed over the last 3 years. So we're religiously looking at that to understand where and when they're moving prices, on which dishes have gone up. Some have gone down as well, but then also around changes to things like a steak, right? Where the price might stay the same, but they've gone from an 8 ounce to a 7 ounce, for example. So you can start to see all of those little things. And yeah, I guess, like, building decisions off the back of that, and then benchmarking our prices against the average of our competitors, putting our price changes in there so that we know, our prices have gone up by X% versus the competitor average of Y%. So yeah, looking at it quite externally. I think when you are, there's I think you need to look at it as if you're selling a burger, for example, forget about if you're kind of trying to sell the absolute best burger in London, but if you've got a burger on your menu, or a steak, or whatever it is, a salmon dish, you look at it and you think, we have to look at what the market is selling that dish for. If everyone else is selling a burger for £17, for us to go and sell a burger for £22 is really hard, unless there's something exceptionally different about our burger. So yeah, it's looking at it quite outwardly, as well as obviously, I guess, geeking out on all the internal data and numbers as well.
I'm just looking in the question sections, and I know we have some dedicated time to Q&A, but I thought as questions pop in that are to do with what we're talking about, it makes sense to do those now. So Andrea asks, have you ever looked at what is the most suitable menu cycle based on the size of the business? So would you look at a menu every 3 months, or would either of you like to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be differences, and I think someone like I say this, I've got no idea, but where Franco Manca might be different versus some, I tend to look at visit frequency and use that as a relatively good measure as well. Like typically in a restaurant space, and that's what I say, I think Franco Manca and those guys are probably a bit different because there's more repeat visits, because of the nature of the food and the fact that it's delicious. I say that like I still remember my first Franco Manca pizza genuinely about 15 years ago.
So do I. I queued for it in Bristol.
The exact setting, pizza, drink, everything. So, you're typically looking at somewhere around 1.3 to 1.8 times a year. 1.8 being at the pretty good end of the spectrum. 1.3. So, I think sometimes, in my opinion, there's a lot of work and stress that goes into trying to do full menu kind of development work and relaunches, and if in reality the guest is only coming 1 and 1.2, 1.3 times a year, look at tweaks. I think kind of look at prices, look at certain dishes, look at certain way you do dishes, maybe rather than kind of the full menu work, because the frequency isn't that high. So I think like something like quarterly for me would be a lot. That's constant. That's just like that would be a constant stream of never-ending menu work.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. Yeah, I think what I would add is it depends how much seasonality is also linked with your brand DNA. So at Franco Manca, for instance, we really try to use seasonal ingredients. So we have, our salads and our pizza being revisited using seasonal ingredients. And the other point is the role of LTOs. So not necessarily going for a full menu full menu restage, but maybe just introducing some LTOs to drive footfall, to drive interest, and make sure the brand is alive. I believe that there is nothing worse than a poor innovation, or a dish that is not ready, that is just launched for the sake of it. So I would always favor a stable menu instead of just innovating for the sake of it. Personally, I think removing a top seller can actually destroy value, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think for the sake of it are keywords there, because I think a lot of people end up in that sort of menu cycle hamster wheel where they're just sort of changing things for the hell of it. And I think if you haven't looked at your menu critically for a very long time, you should absolutely take your time, do that properly. But instead of reinventing the wheel every season or every few months, it's better to just make tiny improvements all of the time and always be thinking, how can this be better?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Because otherwise you get around and it's like, oh crap, it's April.
Yeah.
It's time, right?
So surprise, surprise, the research stage is already running over, because that's my favorite bit. So let's pretend that we have done some research and it's now time to sift through all the data and start spotting trends and what we might leverage in our menu. So Laura, I know one of the things that we spotted really early on in the Real Greek research was that guests who opted for set menus not only had a better customer experience, but they ended up spending a bit more, but because they were having a better experience, they also had a higher value perception. So can you talk about how we decided to leverage that in our menu work?
So I think we understood that set menus had two interesting benefits for us. One, it was creating a proper Greek experience because people had a lot of mezze on the table, a sharing occasion, and we decided our mission at the Real Greek is to take people to Greece. So the set menu was a great way to actually go after this mission and land this new positioning. And secondly, as you said, because we understood that people had a better value for money perception when they were going for a set menu instead of a la carte. So what we did is we really used the menu layout to drive the customer behavior in the direction that we wanted. And that was, an overnight success. So just by moving the set menu in the menu layout, by highlighting it better, by describing it better, also by using illustration, we were able to drive it further, that was really successful for us, and we know it's going to help people to come back and have a great experience.
Yeah, I think what all of the best menu projects I worked on have in common is that they really focus on improving the customer experience. And I know that's something you're passionate about as well, James. And when you come across insights about the customer experience, what people want, what they like, what they don't like, there's an opportunity there to take note of that, not just for your menu, but by actually working on the experience as you go. Can you speak a bit about that?
Yeah, so ties into like personalization, but literally down to individual levels. So one of the big things we've brought in previously is taking like personalized notes on guest preferences and putting that back into the booking platform, so into 7 Rooms. So and actually having that as one of the main KPIs that we track in the business for a long time. And we were getting kind of close to about 50%. So kind of 50% of reservations we'd take a note on, which would be directly basically coming from the floor team as to what that table liked, what they enjoyed. So literally answer people that don't want their steak seasoned or they want their steak cooked black and blue, basically like burnt on the outside and blue in the middle. People that like hate the sauce being on the plate, they always want it on the side. Like all of those little things. They like ice in their drink, they don't like lime in their gin and tonic, like whatever it might be. So that's where I think you've got to kind of try and build a menu for the masses, really. Like you've got to try and build it a bit for everyone that fits into your demographic, but then giving the site the flexibility to make changes and make tweaks at a site level on certain things, I think is really important. So like we've got some guests that they are regulars and we don't have mashed potato on the menu, but this guy always wants mashed potato, for example, right? And he comes often and spends a lot of money. So every time he comes, we do mashed potato, like just for him. So it's things like that, I think, where you can bring in personalization at a site level, at an individual level to drive loyalty. Because for me, that's probably the biggest indication of loyalty and guest experience, way more than a digital loyalty program to get stamps or money back or whatever it might be. So
cool, thank you. While we're on the topic of tech and how you can use tech to aid your work in terms of improving the customer experience or improving your menus, Claire, are you able to oh, I can hear myself. Weird. Are you able to talk us through some examples of how 10 kites could help you turn insights into really quick action points on your menu?
Yeah, sorry, it's the feedback from my laptop, so I'll just go back on mute. I'm not speaking. Yeah, I think obviously from our perspective, we look at menus from a digital perspective, and I think what you've all spoken about in terms of the insights and guest data that you're trying to look at, I think having a digital menu can actually bring that a stage before a guest even enters into the restaurant. So having a digital platform where or a digital menu where your customers are going onto your website and looking at what vegan options you might have, or typical allergies that they might that your customer set might tend to have. And I think having that level of data overlaid with the operational insights that you're getting can then help you determine actually what does the next menu need to look like, so that you're attracting more customers that actually want to come to your restaurant, but you're also pleasing those that are already customers today. And I think typically just some of the digital menu side kind of it's important, and it links into the compliance piece, but it kind of sometimes gets forgotten about, when actually if you can tie that into the rest of what you're trying to achieve from a menu design, I think operators can really benefit when those are all tied up together.
Yeah, and digital menus get a bit of a bad rep. I think people had QR code fatigue after COVID and probably never wanted to see one again. And it's whenever we ask customers, what do you prefer, print menus or QR code menus, they will always say print menus. But it doesn't have to be one or the other, has it? I think a digital menu definitely has, or a digital forward menu has a really strong space on a restaurant website. I know you guys have been sharing a stat about how many people look at a menu online before they go to a restaurant. Is it 77%? Which is huge.
Yeah, a really huge percentage. I think that's it though, isn't it? It's not necessarily about when they're in the restaurant wanting to see that information. If and I'm kind of going back to allergens and nutritional data, because that's kind of where we sit and the benefits of having a digital menu, because then it's all real-time information that's being updated. But if people do have an allergen, then they're 10 times more likely to go onto your website, look at your menu, and determine actually whether they can go to your restaurant. And in restaurant, you might have those separate, and I think that's okay too. I think there's a place for all of that to be combined, but I do think the journey before people are stepping into the restaurant, if you can make that as digital as you possibly can, doesn't need to take away from the menu design. It's adding additional value from a information perspective, but it also can feed into, you can have hero items which are maybe lower carbon, and you've got badges that are displayed in a digital format on your website or even into print. So I think there's a lot of benefit of bringing the digital into it. It's not you also don't want to overwhelm the print menu, but there's a place for both.
I think the interesting thing on that is people are looking at menus, but people are looking at multiple places menus as well. So like I'm shopping around when I'm deciding where I go, in essence, and that is your your window, right? That's your shop window. And it reminds me, I was literally and I think a lot of people are doing this now, on their phone whilst they're walking as well, whilst they're out and about, because that's just when it pops into your head. I was trying to look for somewhere to go over Christmas, and I'd heard some things about somewhere that was meant to be nice. No one on this call, not a branded operator or anything. So, but going on their menu whilst I'm walking home from dropping the kids off at school, walking back, it's I'm going to look at their menu, and it comes as a PDF, and just the way that I was zooming in and out to try and find it. And I was just I'm just giving up. I'm just giving up, and that's so lazy to think that that's what we do, but that's the reality. I just really struggled to read their menu, to navigate my way around it, and I just gave up, and I just then went and looked elsewhere and just booked elsewhere. So it is that shop window.
Thanks for that segue into the final section where we'll talk about strategic implementation and design, and how important it is to really consider how we present our menus, whether they're digital or in print. Laura, we've already touched on how we used illustrations and highlights really successfully to drive people towards those desired ordering behaviors around set menus at the Real Greek. James, I know you have some examples from the copywriting side of things, how changing the language of menus can make big difference. Yeah,
some of it's language, and then some of it's little nudges as well, and almost reframing prices. So we did one where you had, and I can't remember the exact price, but let's just say fries were £5 and Parmesan truffle fries, whatever, was £6. right? So instead of having them as separate items, we just changed and went to plus, basically your fries at £5 plus truffle and parmesan oil plus £1. And suddenly that £1, it feels like, oh, well, for £1, as opposed to having a price there that's £6. And honestly, we saw like a huge spike in people just adding that on, because it's just an add-on as an extra pound. And some of that's taking learnings from QSR, right? They're fantastic at that. Just little nudges, nudge, 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 nudge to get you up. And sometimes full service restaurants don't do that. And that's probably also because they have typically more dishes that they're trying to get onto a physical menu versus QSR, where there's maybe less dishes and it's digital kiosk kind of ordering first. So yeah, things like that, more around framing of where you're putting things on a menu, reframing some of the prices. And then, yeah, I think as I said earlier, descriptions especially on some kind of like Asian influenced dishes like tataki. You've got those dishes that people kind of question and like, what is that? And you just change the description, because it's also a relatively premium dish, right? We're talking kind of £15-16 dish as a starter. So changing that, not changing the fact that it's called tataki, because that's still quite important to the brand, but then in the description you can add things like carpaccio style, right? So that people then are just immediately, I'm going to a nice restaurant for dinner and I don't really want to sound like a muppet, I don't really know what this is. So the safer thing is I won't order that, and I'll order something that's a bit safer that I know. So
yeah. That's very familiar to us, isn't it, Laura? On the Real Greek, we knew our customers wanted a Greeker experience, but then our number one best-selling wine on the list was an Italian wine, and we had great Greek wines, but people just didn't know what to order. They weren't familiar with them, so we ended up adding little descriptions that said, "This is a Greek wine for fans of Provençal Rosé," or "This is a Greek wine for fans of Pinot Noir," and the sales were crazy. It was completely transformational.
And also about your point on prices, James, we had similar examples as well. So we had a product description, which was 3 small pots of, mezze, and just by removing the small, and they were not very small, but just by removing that word, we really had an impact on sales. But also to go back to what I was describing before, the power of words to make sure you're delivering your brand equity as well. So for instance, at some point we wanted to oversimplify the offering on the Real Greek because we felt the menu was quite complex. So we went from cold mezze, which is the way of describing dips such as tzatziki, tara masalata, and so on, to dips. And actually, customer really didn't like it because suddenly it was not authentic enough. It was a cheap way of describing, our homemade, spreads that we were making every day, and so on. So yeah, the power of word to lend brand equity, but also value for money is very important.
And also the power of testing, right? So it would have been disastrous if we changed that on the menu and rolled it out across all the restaurants, whereas every single change we've made along the journey with the Real Greek menu, we've tested it first. So we've been able to spot these trends super quickly and adjust them before we roll them out. So that's super exciting. So we now have about 10 minutes left for Q&A, and so I'll race through the questions that have come in. If you're watching and you have questions, please drop them in and I'll try to cover them all. If we don't cover them all, I'm thinking Team Nutritics will be saving all the questions, and maybe we can tackle them on LinkedIn afterwards if we don't make it through all of them. But I'll start from where they started coming in. Osama is asking, how is the kitchen talent and capabilities having an impact on your menu selection? So I guess that's something we did speak about at the Real Greek, wasn't it, Laura?
It's a very important point. I think you need to start by the team and what you can achieve consistently. And we really removed I don't know, maybe 30% of the dishes we had at the Real Greek, some because they were not fitting the brand DNA, but some because they were too complex to achieve. And I think in the current context, which unfortunately is not going to get better, we need to be able to have operation that can deliver the promise of the dish you want to launch. So I would say it's really central in your product development.
Yeah, I think from my side, I normally look at things of, yeah, it's having a massive impact. Like to answer the question bluntly, when you're looking at development, though, I always personally prefer to like aim for the moon and then try and then dial back to achieve what's necessary. I think rather than starting at what's possible, because I think I prefer to aim and shoot kind of as high as we can, and then just come back a little bit if we need to. And I think the other thing on that is looking at, and this is a really challenging one, I think, from a brand perspective as well, is having different dishes available at different times. You know, if you're doing like a Tuesday 6 p.m. is completely different to a Saturday 7 p.m. When you've got a larger menu and you've got fresh food and your fresh rolling sushi and whatever it is, you're going to be running on a much shorter and smaller kitchen team just because of the covers. So, but then it is a hard one from a brand piece, because you want the person coming in at Tuesday at 6 p.m. to have as good an experience as the Saturday at 7 p.m. So if you start to limit your menu, so I think it's a dangerous one, I think, doing that. But if you put your kind of operator and profitability hat on, it's also a lot easier.
And one last thing I wanted to add on that front is also the power of ingredient quality. So on the Real Greek, for instance, while we have tried to really simplify the operation to achieve consistency, we have significantly and purposefully increase the quality of every ingredient we have sourced, from the oregano, from the tomato, from the olive oil, from the feta cheese, and so on. And this has had a massive impact on the food, and we can really see it in the food sentiment and the Google review that have really skyrocketed the past year. So I guess, a way to mitigate simple recipe is also to offset it by really, really good ingredients.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think both of you have also touched on the question that Elena has asked, so I might leave that one for now and move on to Mark. Is saying great conversation. Thanks, Mark. In terms of delivering for the bottom line, I appreciate this is a big question. Where or what are the biggest immediate wins for operators needing to build a little bit more margin into their menu? Anyone want to jump into that, or should I jump in with my menu matrix?
Go for it.
So I like to put all of my sales mix data through what I call the menu matrix. It's not something that I've invented. I think it was invented in the States in the 80s. They've been using it. It's very prolific over there, less common here. But you're essentially looking at the cash intil per sale of every single item on your menu. So instead of just looking at percentage margins or gross profit, you're seeing exactly how much money you're making with each dish. So when you're putting dishes through the matrix, you're trying to put every single item on your menu, whether it's a dish or a drink, into one of 4 categories. So you've got your horses, which are your hardworking workhorses that sell in high volume, but they're perhaps not making you as much cash per sale as they could. You've got your star dishes that are the ones that you want to be really protecting on your menu because they sell in higher than average volume at higher than average cash profit. Then you've got your puzzles that are selling in lower than average quantities, but higher than average profit. And then you've got your dogs or your duds that are below average in both respects. So you might want to look at cutting those. And I recommend when you're looking at your menu, you can, instead of actually digging too far into the sort of profits of each individual dish, you can achieve the same sort of revenue results by pushing the more profitable dishes. So really questioning, why is it that these puzzle dishes aren't selling? Can we change the language? Can we change the layout? Can we change the order? Like, I remember working on a drinks menu for Dishoom years ago, where we nudged one of the cocktails up about 3 slots in the list, and we sold 200 something more % of it, which is crazy. But little tweaks like that can make a big difference. And then looking at your workhorses, the dishes that are selling really well, maybe those are the ones where you need to question, can I work with my suppliers here? What can we perhaps improve the pricing of, so that we can make a little bit more money every time we sell, because we sell these so much. And then when it comes to taking price and looking at your pricing more strategically, instead of saying, oh, we need to take price by 4%, looking at, okay, can I nudge the prices slightly of the things that are selling in high volume to get the same kind of benefit as a blanket increase?
Yeah,
I see a lot of nodding there from James.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also look at it by menu category, right? So say you've got kind of cold starters, warm starters, sides, mains, steaks, desserts, etc. So looking at it by category and understanding which category is bringing in the most profit. And I'm with you, like, I want cash in the till. I get paid in pounds and pence. I don't get paid in percentage points. So looking at it at a cash margin, I think then bringing in, so I also then bring into that cover data as well. So I'm looking over like a 6-week period, bringing in cover data, analysing sides and sauces per cover, sides and sauces as a percentage of mains, desserts as a cover, desserts as a percentage of mains, etc. Bringing in, if you've got and where possible as well, like the sentiment and the feedback scores by dish level as well. And then absolutely, don't go blanket. Blanket pricing is not a great way to go. If you've got some dishes that you can squeeze a little bit, and that's when you're looking at your competitors as well. It's like, oh wait a sec, they've all put their burgers up 5-6%. Okay, well now I use that data with the cover data, with the profit by dish, with the sentiment, like everything in kind of one place to make them much more kind of calculated decisions.
Yeah. Cool.
I also think just from a tech perspective, having really good tech systems behind the menu as well will really help. I think having a really good recipe management system where you can make changes quickly, that's also linked to a digital menu where those updates are real time, but also, you can then run promotions and, other things that you might want to do quickly that's going to have a bigger impact on your margins on your menu, which typically tend to take quite a lot of time, having to communicate those changes to your staff and sort of building those menus in the background and making sure that from a compliance standpoint you're all good. So I think having a good set of tech behind it as well is really beneficial.
Yeah. Right, so we have 2 more minutes, and I think we probably need to hand over to Claire to wrap up. So we have, thank you guys for all the questions. There are so many. I've tried to screen grab, and hopefully Nutritics will share them all as well, so we can start working our way through them on LinkedIn. But we will get to all of your questions eventually. I could talk about menus all day, and I'm sure you all have places to go. So I'll hand over back to Claire. Thank you.
Thanks, Annica. Yeah, I mean, huge thank you to all 3 of you, Annica, Laura, and James, and everyone who's attended today. Appreciate it. I know there's other big things going on right now, and you've taken the time to hear us out. So thank you for that. I think, the insights today, specifically on moving from sort of having a gut feel to more of a data-led strategy around your menus, is really invaluable. And I think if you want to get further insight, please contact any one of us. I think we'll all be open to having a chat. But yes, for everyone who is watching, we shall be sending a recording of the webinar shortly. And if you haven't already received a link to the playbook, we will be sending you that as well. And then you can share these insights with your colleagues or just keep them to yourself. But thank you all, really appreciate your time, and we will get those questions answered as well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
All.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank